Michelle Farrell here to chat a little bit today. And I'm so excited to introduce your brain to other people because you have decades of experience in early childhood education. You've been a teacher, interventionist, you've been a coach, a director, training facilitator, you're certified in pyramid model. Like, so much in your brain. And we got to meet recently, which was kind of fun. How did our worlds collide?
The first time that we connected was at NACI, but we didn't actually like physically connect. It was like
Right.
a hey, I kind of saw you in passing and like I checked out your session and an email follow-up after that, like interested in the work that you're doing and let's connect and
And for
knew
some
that we
reason
would
you were
both
like, yeah, sure. That makes
always
sense.
good to make more
It
connections.
really is. You were so nice to me.
And then we knew that we were going to both be at the Rocky Mountain Early Childhood
That's right.
Conference here in Denver. And I had the opportunity to come see your session. And that was, there was a little bit of a scheduling room
Oh
arrangement
my gosh.
snafu for
It
you.
was a
And
wild situation. And one of the things that is a great memory about that challenge was how you instantly like just jumped in and started helping with stuff, like because I had my friend Brian there, who's an amazing person we could talk about, but like he was helping me with the tech stuff and the recording and like this and that, and like we were holding all this stuff and trying to move it from this room to that room, and you were just like, can I help you? I was just like, yes, please. Oh
it's
my
like, man,
gosh.
if I was in that scenario, I hope somebody would be like, yeah, do you need some help? Like,
Yeah.
always, try to be the support that you would want.
And I needed it, so I was instantly like super grateful. Um, and man, like we were able to set that up, no problem. It was so fun to have you there in that session. And I feel like, you know, what I've learned already, so in just like a couple interactions with you, so much about pyramid model and challenging behavior and like team culture. And I was like, I know who needs to be on a podcast in front of more people, Michelle Farrell. And tell me a little bit more about kind of the work you're doing now at, yeah, go ahead.
Sure. So I, about a year ago, transitioned I was in a public charter. I had been in the public or charter school world
Yeah.
for like 13 years. And
Wow.
then,
So cool.
um, prior to that, I was in private nonprofit schools as well. So I was in the classroom for, I don't know, 14, 15 years and then
Wow.
moved into like a dual role where I was a teacher director and then moved
Hmm.
into an intervention role where I also took on some coaching responsibilities.
Yeah.
And then my last couple of years in the school setting, I was a director and it was post COVID and there was a lot of challenges that came with that director work, a lot of things around staffing. And ultimately it was time for me to
Yeah.
make a change and
Yeah.
the hours, the commitment was a lot with my own child at home.
Yeah.
And the burnout was very real. So last spring I transitioned to working in early intervention. So I
Yeah.
have a caseload of kiddos that I see birth through age 3 who have an identified delay or disability. And I carry about 20 kids on my caseload or so, and kids have varied services from weekly to a
Hmm.
couple of times a month. And so I support families. It's been a really, really nice
Yeah.
transition to get back to working directly with families. The early intervention model is set up really nicely here in Colorado
Yeah.
to have the family coaching model. And so it's really like it's about working with the kids, but it's about supporting families to
Hmm.
grow their confidence and their skills in supporting their own children. The work is very based in routines, so it's
Right.
not it all happens really naturally, where sometimes when you're working on stuff in the classroom, it feels like extra to
Right.
support kids in their goals, because sometimes the goals don't always align with what's happening in the
Yeah.
classroom, or they don't feel very realistic.
Yeah.
So I love the work because it's directly related to family priorities happening in a really natural setting. Services can really happen wherever, so they can be in the home, or they can, if we're working on like some motor goals, maybe we're doing sessions at the park. If we're working on
Right.
some regulation or socialization goals,
Right.
maybe we do a session at the grocery store, because that's what's really hard for
Wow.
families.
That's so real
um
world, like useful, right? Because I feel like there's so much theory and like there's so much that we know about the brain and about behavior and whatever, but like getting it into real day, everyday practice is so critical. Like that's so great. Like what I think one of the things you mentioned that I think is so relevant is like being in the classroom and like, hey, this thing we're doing right now is working. So we're gonna roll with it as opposed to like, well, we had all these other objectives, like, or like if you have a kid who doesn't do well with transitions and you're like, well, this is going really well. Like, why would we stop this to go after these other things, right? Like, so all these things you're talking about just feel so mega important.
Mhm, mhm. And so my colleague and I, so I when I started early intervention, I started subcontracting with a different agency, and I had a close friend, who we initially met when I first transitioned into the public school world
Mm,
13 years ago.
yeah.
And we were team teachers at the time, and we worked together for a few years. And she's been in early intervention for several years. And we came together and we were like, let's just open our own
Yeah.
practice. Let's
Wow.
just start a business together.
Wow.
Um, and so at
Piece of
we're
cake,
like,
man. Yeah. What could go
this is the
wrong?
next step, right? Um,
Awesome. I
and
love
at
that.
that time I was also doing some training, so I had connected with the Discovery Source. So they are the distributor for pyramid model
Oh,
materials.
that's
So they
right.
make all the pyramid model kits,
Right.
and so they've done a really nice job of making the materials accessible for implementation.
Yeah.
We know that a barrier for creating and using materials is just that time, right? The time to
Yeah.
print it out and laminate
Yeah.
it and do all those
Yeah.
things. So the kit has everything ready there.
Right.
So I
Are some of them
actually
behind you right now on the wall?
yes.
I see some
Oh, yes.
creatures. I see some creatures
Yes.
behind you. Yeah.
Yes. So this is, yeah, we've got that guy up there is one of my favorite. That's Medi Teddy.
Hey,
So
Medi.
he can do, like, you can use him for some yoga practice, and he is movable. So can put him in
Oh.
whatever little yoga position you'd like him to be in.
Oh, he
So
looks fast.
he's yeah, yes. So he's little
Oh, he's so
Medi
peaceful.
Teddy. And then Discovery Source just came out with a new neurodiversity series. So we have
Oh.
Atlas, who is a character who has a lot of characteristics that would embody a child with autism.
Cool.
Um, Haven right here, she is the energy of a hummingbird. So she
Yeah.
embodies what we might see in a child who has some like ADHD characteristics. And then we have our sloth and monkey down here. You might not be able to see them. Maria and Soul, and one has a language delay. And so it's
Hmm.
working with, putting putting things that you might not
Right.
normally see
Right.
um, in a social story or in a children's book to help support that inclusion piece.
Yeah.
So I've led a training. I did a training on Haven a couple of weeks ago, and that was really fun.
That's so fun. So the kids kind of respond to them. They seem to respond to them well.
I think there's so much in puppet
Yeah.
storytelling.
Right.
Um, it's taken me a little
Mm,
bit of time to like really get on board with puppeteering.
yeah.
It's,
Well,
sometimes it
you
feels
can't
a little
like
bit strange, right?
right.
It's
Can you voice them without opening your mouth like, yet, or is that
Oh, no,
no?
no. No, no,
That's a
no.
different game.
No, I mean, yeah. And so it's just one of those that like kids are gonna be far more interested if you
Yeah,
have a puppet helping
yeah.
to read a social
Go
story
figure. Yeah,
than
yeah.
if it's just you and
Right,
your mouth
right,
yammering.
right. That makes perfect sense. Right
Um,
on.
yeah, so I was doing trainings with the Discovery Source and Jana and I just decided, Jana's my colleague, my business partner. So she is like managing a lot of the EI side of it. So she's our director of family-based coaching. So she, does all of the EI side, the billing, the
Right.
looking at some of the referrals, all of that piece. And then I do more on the school-based coaching side while also carrying that EI caseload. So
Yeah,
I have a few schools that I see that I'm supporting with pyramid model implementation,
yeah.
and then also doing some trainings and things. I'm wrapping up my first pyramid model training here with the new content in
Yeah, that's right.
Colorado. Colorado is on the cutting edge of a lot of things
Yep,
pyramid, but it
yep.
took them a little bit to switch over to some of the new national content, and they just rolled that
Okay.
out this past October. So
Wow.
it's been fun to lead the first series here with that new content,
Holy cow.
and helping to support teachers in that lead teacher qualification, and also just understanding best practices for social
Yeah.
emotional development and
Right.
ultimately supporting children with those challenging behaviors.
Man, it's like you have so much happening. You're doing all of these trainings, right? Like so many people are coming to you for all of this knowledge and implementation skill. Like one of the things that I think is so everywhere, ubiquitous, and is so important. I think that I keep hearing at these conferences and with people who are like in the trenches working with kids is challenging behavior, challenging behavior, challenging behavior, challenging behavior. Like I feel like it's so easy to for an educator, a parent, anybody to just be like, this kid is a problem. There's nothing I can do. They're too far gone. Like they'll just be like, "Oh my gosh, I don't know. Nothing I'm doing works." Like I feel like it's so easy to go there so quickly, and I'm wondering, as a person who's done this a million times, and I love your bio on your website where you're like, I have a strong-willed daughter. Like, I just love that line, right? Because you get to live this at work, but you also get to live it and breathe it. You're a person who, walks the walk. You live it at home. So I was like, man, there must have been a moment or like a time that shaped you where you personally were like, oh, this is like manageable. I can work with this. I know what to do. I don't know if it's a confidence thing or if it changed the way you thought about challenging behavior. But I'm wondering if you have a story for us.
I do have a story for you. This was pretty early in my teaching career, when I was fresh into being a lead teacher with my own classroom, and it's
Right.
like so exciting, right?
Optimistic.
Had
What could go
Yes,
wrong?
right?
The
Like
whole
what could
world ahead of you.
go wrong?
Yeah.
Yes. And I worked at the lab school down on campus, on the Aurora campus down at the Metropolitan State University of Denver. I had done work there when I was completing my undergrad. And then once I graduated, I moved into a supervising teacher role there. And at the time, they were piloting a new social emotional curriculum. And it was the early pyramid, like it was the first
Oh,
versions of
yeah.
the pyramid
Right.
model. And so we were like working towards fidelity of implementation, but
Yeah.
it was just parts of it, right? It wasn't like some of the wonderful pyramid work that's happening now. And it was with a pyramid facilitator who, has done a lot of work here in Colorado as well. So she was our coach. Um,
Oh, that's
and
awesome.
I had a child in my classroom who had some pretty deep trauma, was in an adoptive home and was struggling a lot in the classroom. And it was a kid who I felt like I had a pretty good relationship with,
Mm.
but there was still some like pretty
Yeah.
big, challenging, like disruptive, eruptive behaviors, like just a lot. Um, and so I had this coach who said, I think you need to work on your 5 to 1. And I was like, what is five? Like, what are you
Yeah.
talking about? And she said, your 5 to 1 is your ratio of your positive interactions to your negative or neutral interactions with
Mm.
this child. And she said, I don't think that you're really aware of how many directives and how much demand
Whoa.
you're putting on this child on the day to day. And me and my new fresh teacher
Right.
brain,
Right.
um, I was just kind of a little bit like, well, I'm not the problem.
Right. Yeah.
This
How
is
could
like,
that?
what do you mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
And so I dug my heels in a little bit and was like, all right, fine. Like, I'm going to implement, and I'm going to implement so that I can really show you that
Right.
your strategy is not going to
Right.
work. And so we came up with a tracking system. We used a pipe cleaner with little pony beads on it that had 5 beads. And so every time that I had a positive interaction, a bead went over. And then every time that I had to give a directive or I had a negative interaction with that child, all
Wow.
the beads moved back over.
Oh,
And
wow. You reset all of
so,
it. You
and
start from zero. Okay. Got it.
yep, you start from zero. You
Yeah.
just restart
Right.
back at the beginning, right? Like, all right, I got to build up 5 more.
Right. You got to build them up. Yeah. Jeez.
And so we started really small, right? If you're trying to think of your 5 to 1 and you're trying to think about it like universally with your whole class, 20 children, trying to like it's too much
Yeah.
information to hold in
Yeah.
your brain. And even tracking with one kid is a lot. You're with children for 8 hours a day, right? Like
Right.
it's a lot of time to be
Yeah.
that engaged. So we chose specific times of the day that were either right before challenging behavior was likely to occur or in the midst of when that challenging behavior was likely to occur, and we would set like a timer. So like, okay, now's my 20-minute window. For the next 20 minutes I'm going to really intentionally focus and count my 5 to 1,
Mm-hmm.
knowing that bringing your awareness to that is the first step, and that once you're aware of
Yeah. Yeah.
the positive to negative, you're going to just naturally start doing
Right.
it more.
Right.
um this is also when I really learned about using positive narration or positive descriptive feedback as a redirective strategy, so a way to get other children back on task without telling them what to do, by giving by noticing what the children in the classroom are doing that are on the right track, right? Like
Okay.
you give the
So,
direction, you give the direction, it's time to clean up, right? So I'm going to just start positively narrating instead of telling little Johnny to clean up 5
right.
times after I've given the
Right.
direction. I'm going to say, I see the way that Susanna is putting the toys in the bucket, and I see
Right.
the way that Jackson is putting the bucket on the shelf. I see the way that Sarah is walking over to get her coat.
Yeah.
Just any of those, like wherever they are in the step of the
Right.
process. And most of the time, that child who's not doing what they are supposed to be doing is going to
Right.
cue in to, oh, okay, that's what I
Right.
need to be doing. Um,
Most of the time.
so most of the time, not
Yeah.
always, right?
I
Like
feel like
I would give
it's
it a
so.
rule of,
Yeah, I'm sure that nothing's for sure. Nothing's perfect, right? I'm like, it's so funny because whenever we do these sort of examples of challenging behavior and what most people, I think most people that I've worked with instantly see their kids or their students or, the people that they work with. And I feel like I always think about myself. Like, I'm just like, oh, I would have been that kid who was like, the problem with here or there. So when you say like, I see the way Susie's picking up. I see the way Jackson is handling. I'm like, I'm the problem kid. I'm just like teacher's pet. You know what I mean? Where I'm just like, I'll dig into the problem even more. Like, so I'm like, oh my gosh, like that maybe works for 90% or I don't know, whatever the high number is of cases. But like, there are, I'm sure a few that aren't working. Like, what do you do when you're like, okay, this is a thing I know usually works and now it's not working? Like, do you have like a sequence that you run through?
It's so hard because
Yeah.
when you talk about behavior, it's not ever really about the behavior. It's
Um,
about the why, right? It's about the function. So when we start thinking about children who may be off task during a transition, there's a million reasons why that could be happening.
yeah.
When we look at behavior functions, we know that usually it's to avoid or obtain something. So avoid
Right.
attention, avoid a challenging task, avoid a transition, avoid an adult, avoid a peer. Like there's this avoidance component, but there's
Mm,
also this, I'm seeking something.
yeah.
Like I want attention, and even if it's negative attention, that's attention. Or maybe I have a sensory need, or, maybe there's something even deeper around like peer connection. I'm craving some kind of
Right.
peer
Right.
connection, and I'm doing this thing that looks like it's for this, but it's
Right.
really for this. And so that's why behavior is so hard, right?
Yeah.
There's no like intervention for like, okay, you have a child who's hitting in your classroom.
Right.
Okay, here's the exact intervention, because the intervention is going to change based on what the function of the
Mm-hmm.
behavior is.
Right.
It also is going to change based on the skills that that child already has,
Right.
what do they already have, what do they love, what are they really good at, and how can we take those strengths and build upon them and teach them some of these new or missing skills that are going to help
Right.
support them and are going to help reduce this challenging behavior.
Mm. I love how you're approaching this, right? You're like, it's the like whatever it is, it's not clear, but it's also somewhere. It's something. And, as opposed to like, I think most untrained people would probably immediately get into a power struggle. I said, this is what we're doing. And their authority comes from them being a bigger person, right? Or
Mhm.
the person in charge. And so we end up in this power struggle. Like, I think that's so easy to just go straight to like, I said this, um, versus your approach, which is just like, well, what is it that this, like, that's a curiosity. Like, that's a completely
Mhm.
different, like emotional response that you had inside yourself. How did you do that? Right? How did you go from like, instead of trying to rein it in or leash it in, you went to how did you go to
Because the power struggles don't work.
right,
They just don't, right?
right, yeah, right,
Um, and I mean, I think some of it comes down just to working with, a lot of children who struggled.
yeah,
My time and my experience was in communities that had high numbers of children who had identified delays or disabilities.
yeah,
The last school that I worked at, there was in our ECE program, our classrooms, we had over 13 different languages spoken, but in the whole school, there was over 40 different languages spoken, pre-K through
wow,
fifth grade. Um,
wow,
and like really like diversity at its core, and that was
wow,
definitely one of the things that I loved, but it provided a new challenge, right? Because there with that idea that like there's no one set intervention, you have to start thinking about interventions totally differently when
Yeah.
you're supporting children who are neurodiverse or children who are multilingual. Um, and so looking at some of those supports in
Yeah.
response to that, I also I was the behavior kid. And
Same. Yeah.
like
Yeah.
so I
Empathy.
feel yes, like
Yeah.
that. And my daughter's 4 now, but most of my career I didn't have children. I was, a
Yeah.
teacher without kids, and I think
Right.
that you don't have to have children to be
Right.
a great teacher, but I definitely know that once I did have my own child, the way that I um empathized with
Right.
children and families changed
Oh,
greatly.
wow.
Um but kind of back to your question is like
Yeah.
what was that shift? I think some of it came very early on, like you said, when teachers are like, well, I've tried everything,
Right.
and like that really deficit mindset of kids. And this child is just challenging, there's nothing I'm going to be able to do, like
Right.
almost that like helplessness
Right.
piece, or I've tried everything and nothing is working.
Right.
And going into that spot of like, oh, this kid needs an evaluation or this kid needs a special placement, like thinking that that's gonna solve all the problems.
Right.
And we know that identification of a delay or disability is an important part of the step, but
Mm.
it's not like you get that child identified for special education services and now they're a special education student and they're no
Right.
longer your student. Like,
Right.
they're still your student, and
Yeah.
it's still your responsibility
Right.
to meet them where they're at and provide the supports and accommodations for them.
Right.
And so, I think that I was a teacher that was like in that mindset
Mm-hmm.
initially early in my career, that like it can't be my fault, like this has to come back to the
Right.
kid. And
Yeah.
um and the more that I was able to just dig in kind of with that lens of curiosity, I was able, after lots of years in the classroom, you get lots of exposures to different interventions and things that you can try, strategies.
Right.
And I felt like I just like kept building up my bank of strategies, your teacher tool
Mm.
bag. And I found that when I was able to look at some of these behaviors with this lens of curiosity, I had more success at identifying which tool was going to fix which problem. Um, and then started to have some more success, supporting others to
Mm-hmm.
talk through some of those behaviors by asking questions around that why and that
Right.
function. Um, I that was probably right around the time that I had taken the initial pyramid model
Right.
class. And so that was also when I was introduced to a lot of the
Right.
pyramid model strategies. And even though I was not like a practitioner that
Right.
used the practices with fidelity all
Right.
of
Right.
those years, like they were always there.
Yeah.
There was always a focus on relationship building and structure and schedule and routines, and all of those just key pieces that we
Right.
know have to be in place in the
Mm-hmm.
classroom. And when they're not in place, maybe you would have otherwise had like one challenging behavior kiddo rising to the top of the pyramid.
Mm-hmm.
And without those strategies in place, you don't have structure, your schedule is, not balanced, or your expectations aren't clear, you don't have
Right.
supports for carrying through routines, like all of those pieces. If you don't have those in place, then you're going to have way more kids that are rising up to the top of the pyramid
Right.
needing these intensive individualized supports, and you can't manage 5
Right.
individualized
Right.
intervention plans in your classroom. It's not possible. So that's
Right.
why we look at those supports for all kids down at the bottom of the pyramid.
Right. That makes sense. Yeah, I mean, you have your limited resources. Some people get a co-teacher. That's great. right? I don't think that's the case for everyone's kind of setup. Um, One of the things I'm thinking about as you're talking about this is like not just the behavior that's happening in the classroom, but like or in the the learning center wherever. I feel like there's also there's also the culture and behavior of what's happening of the educators themselves, like the team itself. Like, what would you say you see or hear in teams that respond effectively to like challenging behavior, right? Because you've been in classrooms, you've like trained on this, you've had firsthand experience with it as a teacher, but also as a parent. Like, what do you see or hear? Like, what are those symptoms that make you say, "Oh, this team is got it. Like they're pinning these down. Like it's working."
I think communication is a huge part
Mm.
of it. Like, um, when we're thinking about challenging behavior, like, I don't know, I kind of think about it like in levels, right? Like, you have
Okay.
challenging behavior that's like annoying.
Right.
You
Non-violent,
have,
but just
yes,
irritating. Right. Right. Right.
yes. Um, and then like you have sometimes like kids are truly in crisis,
Yeah.
and um those behaviors are so hard for the adults, because it's hard to see this child in crisis. But
Yeah.
strong teams are able to um, support each other in a different way.
Yeah.
There's not as much like blame shifting,
Oh,
and um,
right.
there's this it's that instead of that deficit based mindset, like moving towards that strength based mindset, keeping that
Mhm.
goal that, like we have a vision, without understanding where we want kids to go, without understanding their skill gaps and what they need to be successful socially in the classroom. We're running in circles, we're on a
Yeah.
hamster wheel,
Right.
and that's exhausting. And
Yeah.
teams that don't feel like they have a plan to, like, I think the
Right.
planning piece, it's so important, because
Mm.
even if the behaviors are big and they're challenging, and they're destructive or violent and hard, and like bring up your own stuff as an adult,
Yeah.
if you have a plan, then you're like, okay, but I know what to do. Like, I have an
Yeah.
in the moment plan. I have outlined my responses.
Right.
I have developed my own neutralizing routine so that I'm
Mm.
putting a pause in between the behavior and my response. Granted that
Oh.
it's not a dangerous behavior, right? Like,
Right.
I
Right.
have a minute to take a sip of my water before I go
Hmm.
and redirect the behavior so that I can
Right.
think about what
Right.
I'm going to say, and I'm
Right.
not going to rattle off the first thing that comes to my brain.
Right.
Um,
Wow.
so, thinking about those things and having that plan, like, okay, I know that if this child does X, Y, or Z, we've done the analysis on the function. We have a best guess about what the function is. I know that my response is not going to reinforce. And as soon as the child does the correct behavior, I'm going to provide positive descriptive feedback about what they did well. And, like, it's
Yeah.
almost like formulaic,
Right.
but
Right.
like flexible in a way
Huh.
too. So really, like, I think teams that are supporting those big challenging behaviors really, really well, it's coming down to the planning piece, the work
Mm.
that's done well before the
Right.
behavior's out of control.
Right. Like we have a fire emergency plan. Like it's on the wall. We know I'm going to go here. You're going to here. We're going to meet here. And if that doesn't happen in 3 minutes, then we know to go, something else is wrong, and like to go to the next step and call this person or whatever. Like that makes perfect sense that like, hey, we agree as a team. This is how we solve this. And I feel like, so much of like, I've worked with a lot of teams, and I feel like so much like there's this common misconception about team culture that like oh, culture, like we have a great team culture, like we have a Keurig in the office, or like there's a ping pong table, or like, you know what I mean? It's like all this stuff that like doesn't matter. And one of my favorite authors and thinkers, Seth Godin, is always like, um, culture is basically people like us do things like this. And what you said, I think there's a couple things I thought were like genius about what you said, because one of them was that pause moment of like, okay, I need this second um, to make sure like I know exactly what's going to come out of my mouth. I know exactly how I'm going to deliver it. I can feel that. I need to like get my heart rate to a place where I can deliver it the way I want to deliver it, and I'm not reacting. Right, I'm choosing to respond, which is always really really hard. But the other thing you said that was really cool was collaboration. And yeah, we know teams need to collaborate. Yeah, communication. Woo, yeah. Like we know. But like what's cool about that, like what it looks like is a group of people who are faced with a problem, and they're all saying, no one's pointing fingers. Like they're looking at the behavior and they're saying, this is a problem we're solving collaboratively. Like what should we do now? Okay, cool. We're going to try this. Like this isn't working, so maybe what we should do is this. Like a cohesive unit problem solving together versus you need to get that under control, right? Or like some other kind of more, I don't want to say the word toxic because I think the word toxic is overused, but like unhelpful uh kind of like commentary, or you know what I mean? Like it's like, when you see um like a musician playing piano and they're just like floating around the keys and it just looks so easy, or somebody's diving off of a diving board and they do this flip thing and they just like, and then bloop, they land perfectly, and it's just like, oh my god, that just looked so fluid and easy. But like, yet all of us know that if we got up there, like there's no way we would just look ridiculous, or like we could never do that, right? Like what I think you're pointing at is deep expertise, right? Is like this practice that we've done for a long time that like is becoming second nature and looks really natural, but like required a lot of that work and like problem solving as a team to make happen. Like I wonder what other behaviors would show up as sort of like symptoms of a struggling team, right? Like we just got to see what it kind of looks like when it's going well, but like what are some of the signs that you maybe have seen that are like, ooh, that's a key, red flag. I don't want to say red flag, but like a red flag. You know what I mean? Or like some kind of problem where you're like, we need to solve this on an educator level before we can implement our strategy or approach to kids.
I think that when we're thinking about struggling teams, it almost in the same way to children's
Yeah.
behaviors comes back to some of that function piece. Like, what is the underlying issue on the team? Like, not even necessarily related to challenging behavior. Like,
Yeah.
is does the workload feel imbalanced, right? Like that's something that I've seen a lot is teachers feel like they might be doing more than their
Yeah.
co-teacher or their assistant teacher, or this teacher always
Right.
comes in late and I work really hard to be here on time. And so I think that those things can really exacerbate
Yeah.
problems
So basic, but like
when
so big. Yeah,
yes.
I'm with you.
And so when we start adding in things like challenging behavior in the mix, and the team is having challenges trusting each other
Oh,
because they have these underlying,
right.
um, just
Can we
like
say resentment? Can we
feelings
say
of,
resentment?
yes,
It's a little,
yes,
it
like,
can be, right? If
and
it builds up, if you let it
yeah,
accumulate. Yeah.
for sure. Um, And then I also think when we're looking with challenging behaviors, a lot of times teachers are doing what they think is right.
Right.
And
Oh, just like young Michelle Farrell on First Day, where you were like, "What are you talking about?" Yeah. Okay.
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. And so it's, sometimes if we're talking about implementing a strategy or an intervention, they might not have the buy-in. And
Right.
so it's really hard to make determinations about what's working and what's not because we're not implementing with fidelity because
Right.
we have these underlying, like, I'm not the problem mindset.
Yeah.
And the other pretty big behavior that you see on teams is that deficit thinking. Like
Yep.
this child is never going to be able to sit on the carpet during circle time, so
Right.
I'm not even going to bother with the
I'm not going to
interventions. This
treat
is
them with the same empathy. I'm the way that I'm
mhm,
going to treat. I'm now put them in this other category of like, you don't deserve my effort, which means
mhm.
now I get to go. I don't know, authoritarian or whatever the normal, you know, other approach would be.
And that pushing it off, right? Like we just need to get through until he goes to kindergarten, or we just need to get through until,
Wow. Yeah.
like, and just like going into
Right.
survival mode, which
Right.
is a defense mechanism. And sometimes, like, you, as an adult and as a teacher, you do have to protect yourself in
Yeah.
some ways, and your brain is going to do that kind of naturally with
Right.
some of the ways that you're, especially with that kind of like pulling back and I don't want to say giving up, but like
Mm,
when you're less invested and you're just doing a little less than you were doing
yeah.
previously,
Yeah.
and um like that's a defense mechanism, right? Like I'm
Yeah.
tired of things not working and I'm tired of feeling this way, so why bother?
Yeah.
And when you have it, if you have teams where there's already that resentment piece over effort, and then you have people that are really moving into this protective mode,
Yeah.
and from the teammates, it might be viewed as something different, right? Like it might
Right.
just be viewed as laziness or,
Oh, right.
a lack of commitment when really it's survival.
Right. I feel like there must be so many kids who get pushed along to the next step, to next grade, and like every year is the same thing. And then at the end, they pop out of the system, and then now they're adults, and here we are, right? Like I don't know what the number is, but gosh, that has a very real downstream impact, as we say.
Yes. And there's also, um, like you work in the field. I'm sure you're familiar with the statistics on the expulsion
Oh
rates
gosh,
in preschool classrooms. So
we were just
preschoolers
talking about
are
that. Yeah,
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 I mean, they're suspended at a much higher rate. And within those numbers, we also know that Black boys are suspended at a even higher rate than
right,
their peers of different races and
right,
genders. And
right,
that Black girls too are also not as high. Their
right,
expulsion rate is not as high as Black boys, but also is higher
right,
than their white peers.
right.
And I think too that deficit based mindset can really
Yeah,
allow that to continue happening.
right.
With this, the idea of like we can't meet their needs here.
Yeah, right,
Like we don't have the support and we don't have the resources and we can't meet their needs here. So
right,
we're going to discontinue your care
right, right. And here we are.
and that's it, right?
That's
And
it.
then
Yeah,
the family doesn't have any other choice but to go try to start over somewhere
right,
else. A lot of
right,
times families are not super upfront about why
right.
they left their
Obviously,
previous program.
right. Of course.
Um, and then they do the whole thing all over
Right,
again.
right.
And
Yeah,
I mean the impact on those children, their first school experiences being so
right,
negative
right.
when Like school should be a safe place and
Right.
it should be a supportive place that provides developmentally appropriate
Right.
experiences for
Right.
us. And I think that is ultimately like another kind of underlying cause of some of these big behaviors is that we're asking children to sit on the carpet for a 20-minute circle
Yeah.
time
Yeah.
when their attention span does not allow for that. And then we're punishing them and we're getting upset with them when they're engaging in behaviors
Mm.
that are setting to avoid these
Yeah.
developmentally inappropriate
Right.
experiences. And I hear from teachers a lot, like, we have to prepare them for kindergarten. Um,
Right.
and I don't
Right.
know if you're familiar with Dr. Rosemary Allen. She's amazing. She is a professor here at Metro. She was one of my professors when I was in undergrad, and she does a lot of work in the field around equity and justice work
Yeah. Yeah.
for children of color. And she has a few, I've seen her speak many, many times, but one of the things that I've heard her say a few times is that it's not our responsibility as pre-K or ECE teachers or TK or whatever you want to
Right.
call
Right.
it,
Right.
this pre-kindergarten year. It's not our responsibility to prepare children for developmentally inappropriate kindergartens by using developmentally inappropriate practices in our own rooms.
Right. Gosh, it seems so straightforward though when you say it like that, right? Versus like if I'm thinking of like a director who's like, you know, a director of a childcare center or like, preschool, and they're just struggling to just keep it all together, right? And it's like, how can I don't have the tools, like I'm just assuming the mindset here, right? Like I don't actually know. I'm assuming the mindset is gotta be like, I don't have the tools and resources. I don't know how to fix this. Nobody on my team knows how to like, right? Like we can't problem solve here. Like the only way for the business or like for the group, the organization, the agency to keep going is to like remove this thing, this problem, and that's how we're going to solve it. Like how how could a person who's in that position like what would they have to see to believe that like the approach of curiosity and like, hey, your kid doesn't have a problem there. You said something that resonated with me. The language was like, um the child is not giving you a hard time, they're having a hard time. How do you get a director to see that, or believe that there's a way to help that kid that also like supports teachers and everyone else in the system? Is that
That's
an
such a
impossible
big
question?
question. Like
Is it
it's
impossible?
I mean, it's not impossible, right? But I think that it comes down, to like I'm obviously all about the pyramid model
Yeah,
and
yeah,
that we know that the closer to fidelity that we get, the better
it works.
outcomes we're going to
Yeah,
have. We do have a few pyramid model implementation sites here in
right.
Colorado. So for programs who are interested in doing implementation, I would suggest that they go visit a site and see it in
Yeah,
action.
they got to see it to
Um,
believe it.
because that like we were talking earlier, you're getting ready to make a move here and you're
Yeah,
like sometimes you just got to go and you just got to see how it
yeah,
feels, right? It's
right,
about the feeling.
right.
And when you walk into a classroom with strong pyramid model implementation,
Mm,
it's that feeling, right? Things feel good. um and there's like pyramid models not the only way to get that good
yeah,
feeling in
yeah,
your classroom and that good vibe, but it's definitely like it's a program that's outlined all the practices that you need to do to
right,
create it, right?
right,
It's almost like a manualized process
right.
of these are all the supports that are
Mm,
needed to happen to have this
yeah,
this
yeah,
strong um But I also like I think it a lot of this comes down to developmentally appropriate expectations
Mm,
and understanding of child development. Like
yeah.
toddlers are in their cause and effect play stage, and one of the ways that we show that is by dumping buckets of toys out on the ground
Yeah.
because it's a cause and effect experience.
Right.
And we know post COVID, like we might be teaching in preschool classrooms, ECE 3 or 4s, and we might have children that are developmentally functioning closer to a toddler level who
Right.
might be in
Right.
that cause and effect play stage
Right.
for longer than we would have expected. And if we don't understand child development and the stages of play and the skills and the types of play that children need to support
Right.
those skills, and we don't create environments that support where children are in their development, that's when behaviors are going
Yeah.
to happen too.
Right.
So I think
Right.
like part of it is the knowledge base around knowing what kids need
Right.
and setting up structures to help them be successful. And again, coming back to that behavior and
Yeah.
viewing it like, because we all have our hot button behaviors, right? If
Right.
you are a toddler teacher and children dumping toys is a hot button behavior for you,
Oh, I
maybe a
see.
different age group is going to be a better fit for you, right?
Wow.
Like,
That's a hard realization. I mean, you're right. Right? Like maybe that's not sustainable, but that's a hard realization, I feel like. Because and it goes back to the same thing you were just talking about, which is manage your expectations. That's what you were saying, right? Like manage your expectations about what this student child is capable of for their kind of developmental state, right? And that may be different because COVID, right? And I worked with a lot of middle school and high school students over the last couple years, and all over the United States, and everywhere we went, all teachers were like, they're coming in a year or two developmentally behind, and that the way that that looked at middle school and high school was maturity, right? Where you're just like, wow, they look a year younger, they look a year less mature. So like what you're saying, I mean, the pattern is super prevalent. It's across everyone who was in school, over COVID. But I'm just like, man, that is a wild experience and challenge for sure.
well, and people want to be done talking about COVID and the impact that it has and it
Yeah.
had. And I get it,
Right.
right? Like,
Same. Yeah.
I understand, but my daughter was born in April of 2021. So she was, right in the middle of all of that. I like we chose to keep her home her first year
Yeah.
before putting her in a program because I was afraid of all the germs. And
Right. We didn't know
like
anything. Yeah. It was like,
we
yeah.
didn't. And like my daughter's socialization happened in the toddler setting later than it otherwise would have. Like that
Yeah.
impacted what I would have the choice that I would have made as a parent.
Right.
But also like my daughter's going into her pre-K 4 year.
Yeah.
So
Right.
like we want to pretend that it's over,
Right.
but like there were impacts on my daughter, and she's going into pre-K 4. So like
Yeah.
ECE teachers, pre-K teachers, early childhood educators, like
Yeah.
in a few years, like yeah, we can stop talking
Yeah.
about the impacts of COVID on such
Right.
a
Right.
high level,
Right.
but the kids in your programs right now are kids who were impacted. They are
Yeah.
children who had different experiences than they otherwise would have had.
Hmm.
And parents working from home, like we know that um, children who are in affluent homes are being spoken to way more than
Right.
children who are living in
Right.
poverty. Like they're depending
Right.
on which study you're quoting, like
Right.
I want to say like 17,000 more
More
words a
words.
day.
Yeah.
And So during COVID, adults were so overwhelmed and stressed out, and they were trying to work from home, and they had young children. And so the language, the
Right.
talking, like adults again were in that survival mode and probably withdrew more than they
Yeah,
realized
for
because they
sure.
were just trying to do whatever it was to get by. So I think,
Yeah.
yes, people want to be done talking about COVID, but
Right. Right. Right.
also we this is important for us to know when we're thinking about child development and when we're thinking about what kids need to be successful.
Yeah. I mean, the flu happened, and then humans had to talk about the flu forever after that because we're still talking about the flu. So I'm sort of like, well, you know, as much as we don't want to talk about this and that, like we're going to keep learning things, and it's going to be 10 years from now. Oh, people who had this type of COVID are now more likely to blankety blank. It's like this.
Yeah.
It'll, here we are in the long tail effects of all of it. Um, I have another like behavior related question for you, which is more around like educator behavior. I feel like it's so there are certain things that we try to do to help. And we're like, this is a good idea. And then it's kind of backfires. Like what are some like well-meaning responses that educators may have to challenging behavior, classroom disruption, whatever it is that like, ooh, it's an instinct. It felt like a good idea at the time, but now it's either exacerbating it or making it worse.
I think that this is another one that it can be hard is
Yeah.
because we're thinking about um back to the function, right?
Yeah.
Everything
Yeah.
always comes back to the function and the reason and the why behind it.
Mm,
And so if we're not utilizing data and we're not
yeah.
looking at the behavior and what's happening before and what's happening after, to tailor our interventions, we might be doing things that we think are helping that are actually reinforcing the behavior, and reinforcing. So I
That
think
seems like the
that could,
worst kind of outcome. Yeah.
yes. And so, I see it too with families sometimes that I
Yeah.
work with, right? Like as as the adult, you have your child who is having a meltdown over
Right.
whatever,
Right.
right? And you're just like, fine, whatever, I don't care. Have the lollipop. Like
Right.
just go,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Like I'm done. Like back to kind of those hot button behaviors, like whining is a hot button behavior for me, and my daughter is in her whining era. She um I
Yeah.
mean, just like
Yeah.
even simple requests are coming from a whine.
Right. Right.
Um and so like if we know that children are engaging in a behavior because they are trying to avoid a task, and we as an adult are making an assumption that they're engaging in the behavior because they want attention, and we ignore the behavior,
Mm-hmm.
then we're allowing them to escape and avoid that task, right? I'm
Yep.
reinforcing the behavior
They
by
got what they
ignoring what
wanted.
they're doing because it wasn't related to attention, which was what my original thought was.
Right.
So I
Right.
think
I see.
like there's not an answer of like these are behaviors that
Yeah.
we think are helpful, and
Right.
so I think that is part of that question. And then
Right. It's
I
why challenging behavior
started
seems so hard, right? Because it's like if it was a playbook of like if this happens, then do that, then it would be a lot easier. But because it's
Mhm.
like it's so variable, and you have to dig so much, and you have to use empathy. So and it's like we were talking about the mastery of you know digging and using that curiosity in a moment where you as an educator or a parent or an adult is like the most likely to want to quit or blow up or pull the authority card. Like it is the moment where you're the most likely to be like, ugh, like come on. So like that shift is really the hardest thing, I feel like.
Mhm. And I think like it comes down to the relationship, right? It comes down to how well
Yeah.
you know the children. If you have a child engaging in challenging behavior and you don't know them very well, then you're going to have a harder
Yeah.
time identifying the function. Um,
And you when you say know them, it's like literally know like data, like behavioral data on what they've done with these types of situations before. But also I would imagine you kind of also mean some level of trust, right? Like you've worked with them before,
mhm.
they nor sometimes like they're amicable to you it's some to some degree, right? Is there anything else in there that's kind of like part of the relationship
Yeah,
requirement?
the value, like understanding who they are as a person. I
Mm,
think sometimes, like, I don't want to say sometimes children are numbers, but I do think sometimes children are numbers. Like, especially
you're gonna get us canceled,
in,
Michelle.
I'm sorry. No, but like sometimes I feel like teachers don't know what the child really likes. Like
Yeah.
who, like what's going to make you laugh and what,
Yeah.
like who's your favorite TV character and
Right.
who's,
Like if
and
you
I
just
see
play their
this.
favorite song, they're more likely to come back for a second.
Right,
Right.
right. And I think we're looking at kids, sometimes not as people because they're kids, but they're little
Right.
tiny people with
They sure
preferences
are.
um and so I think that can be a challenge and can be a barrier. This is one of the things, when we're looking to create some of these individualized interventions or individualized behavior
Yeah.
plans. um, we need to have a list of response strategies. We need to know how we're not going to respond because we
Yeah.
don't want to reinforce the behavior. And then we also need to know positive responses that are going to reinforce the behavior. And it is always a
Mm.
challenge when you come to that spot and you're like, okay, what does this child like? And if the teacher has no answers, or they say they don't like anything, or they like
Oh.
destroying the room, or they blah blah,
Yeah.
like
So
they go
negative.
back to that deficit mindset, then that's clear that like you don't know this child as a
Right.
person. Like you see this child as, I don't like, the only word that's coming to my head is like by a number, but
Right.
it's not like, it's
Right.
just, like
Yeah.
you're not valuing them for who they are in life and as a learner. And I think that adds a whole
Yeah.
other layer of that
Right.
that relationship piece. It's really hard to build
Yeah.
relationships if you don't see children for who they are.
That makes perfect sense to me. I'm thinking of myself again. And I was like a kid who would tell my mom she would bring me something in a cup and I would be like, "Well, I want it in a green cup." For whatever reason. I just had I really, I wasn't interested in drinking this. I wanted it in a green cup, Michelle, and I was going to have it in a green cup. The
And
silliest stuff that drive adults crazy.
well, and my daughter's the same way. A lot of the time, her function of her behavior is she wants to be in control of the
Yeah,
situation.
right.
And so I just like my biggest strategy with her is choices. She gets choices on everything. Okay, it's almost time to go to bed. Do you want me to set a timer for 3 minutes or 4 minutes? Do you want to set the timer or do you want me to set the timer? Okay, my timer's going off. Are you going to turn it off or am I going to turn it off? Do you want the pink cup to go to bed or the blue cup? Do you want to walk up the stairs like a penguin or fly up the stairs like a butterfly? Do you want to use the pink toothbrush or the purple toothbrush? Do you want to go up the slide or up the ladder to get, like, it's literally
Yeah, wow.
our hardest routines are, it's clearly our hardest routine is bedtime and
Right,
transitioning to bed
right.
because that's the one
You
that I
got it
have all of the
dialed
examples
in.
of the choices.
Yeah,
um but if I provide her all of those choices, like it's not always a perfect bedtime. It doesn't always mean that she's gonna comply with every
Yeah.
single request, but
Right.
it's definitely improved, right? Like
Right.
we know to some degree, like a lot of behaviors that we're qualifying as challenging behaviors are normal behaviors for kids.
Yeah.
And I think coming back to that definition of challenging behavior through the pyramid model, which is behavior that is high in frequency, so it's occurring
Hmm.
often. Um, it's occurring over time, so it's persistent. And then it's high in either duration or intensity. So
Right.
when we're thinking like hitting is
Right.
actually a developmentally appropriate behavior, hitting 50 times a day is not a developmentally appropriate behavior.
Right.
Hitting somebody hard enough that they fall down or are injured, right? That's a high intensity.
Right.
So it's
That's like managing the expectation, what you just said, right? Because if you don't know that, then you would be like, whoa, reaction, 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 reaction. Like holy smokes. Like I feel like there there's there's the agreement of your team that has to be like, hey, we agree, like these are the ways that we will handle things, these are the ways we will not handle things. Like there's a charter on the wall, or like I don't know, maybe that's overkill, but like there's a charter that everyone's just like, this is how we do this, that we can all refer to. But then there's also the kind of like, here's how we internally will choose to respond to these things. Like we will have these expectations. These are the developmental categories that people are in. Like this is the kid's swing zone. Like here's what we expect to happen, and then here's how we expect to respond. Like those are the kind of like expectation charters that I was. Is that a thing? Do people do that? Is that like is that a thing people do?
I like it's definitely a part of the behavior planning process for individualized children for sure when we have
Yeah,
some of those big um
but not culturally on a team.
probably probably not
Hmm.
as much as would be helpful.
Oh,
I I've worked in schools that have, defined like internal commitments and collaborative
yeah.
norms that
Okay.
kind of like refocus back towards the mission and vision of
Right.
the school and the program. And there were some really good, like, I don't know, kind of like general collaborative norms around like presuming positive intentions,
Yeah.
right? Like, I know
Yeah.
that while that might have felt that you, as my
Yeah.
teammate, were doing something to slight me, I know
Yeah.
I'm going to presume positive intentions and
Yeah.
whatever, right?
Right.
So
Right.
like I think having like norms, and I think that you could absolutely take it a step further of norms of this is how we think about children, and
Yeah.
I think that that would be a great opportunity to create a norm around that strengths-based thinking
Right.
versus that deficit-based thinking. And if it's a part of the expectation
Mhm.
and the culture, your commitments that you're making to each other as a team, your norms of how you collaborate, um,
Yeah.
I think that that could absolutely be very impactful.
Mm. Well, we only have a little bit more time together here for this. And I feel like we could talk about so many, like I feel like I can learn so much from you about this strategy, that strategy. Um I have a couple thoughts. Like one thing that I would think would be really great to like end with is, what like one educator behavior would you just matrix download into the back of every educator's brain, into like every team to model during behavior challenges? Like what's one thing that you wish everyone could at least start with? You know what I mean?
I think that neutralizing routine, that
Mm,
putting that pause between the
right.
behavior and your response. The pyramid model website, the National Center for Pyramid Model Innovation's website is pretty easy to remember. It's just www.challengingbehavior.org. They have some really good resources on there around developing a neutralizing routine that include identifying your hot buttons as an educator. So knowing which
Right.
behaviors are going to really, get under your skin more than
Yeah.
others, and creating a plan around that.
Yeah.
Also, like, understanding too, like, a part of that planning process is like knowing that maybe we're not always at our best. Like, maybe
Yeah.
I'm really, like, maybe on Tuesdays I always feel really tired because
Yeah.
I'm taking a
Right.
class on Monday nights or
Right.
whatever. So having those, like, when I feel tired, I will
Right.
drink extra water and make sure that I'm doing X, Y, or Z
Yeah.
as a part of this, like,
Right.
self-care piece. But also, like, when I'm feeling tired and this child triggers me with their behavior, I will take 2 deep breaths. I
Yeah.
will close my eyes and picture the
Yeah.
beach. I will,
Right.
like, understanding too that, like, most behaviors are not going to be a life or death. If
Yeah.
nobody is
Right.
in immediate danger, like, take a second
Right.
and take a breath.
Right.
Like, there is nothing stopping you. And I know that, like, taking a breath is, it's all kind of
It
cliche, right?
sounds
But
so fluffy, Michelle. It
it
sounds like it's
sounds
not going to
fluffy.
work.
You're right. It does sound fluffy. But we also know that when we do, like, when you take that breath, your brain gets more oxygen and you're able to think clearly.
Right.
Also, if you're working with a child who is in an emotional escalation, we have mirror neurons in our
Right.
brain that prompt us to mirror actions of those around us.
Right.
And so, if I take a breath and I have a child who really also probably needs to
Right.
take a breath, there's a chance that their mirror neurons might kick in and they might take a breath naturally with me. My co teacher in my classroom, who is watching this unfold, might see
Yeah.
me take a breath and take a breath themselves. So yes, it does. It sounds fluffy,
Yeah.
but there's so, like, when we think about developing this neutralizing routine, it's really,
Yeah.
it's individualized to you as a person. So, like, maybe taking a breath is not going
Yeah.
to be a strategy for you,
Right.
but maybe you have a favorite song and you want to, in your head, sing the first 2 lines of that song,
Mm.
while you, like, put yourself in closer proximity to that child, to whatever, like,
Right.
maybe you,
Right.
or you
Right.
have a
Right. Right.
mantra.
Right.
Like, conscious discipline has a mantra around, like, I am safe, keep breathing, I can handle this, right? Like, maybe that's what is in your neutralizing routine and is putting that pause
Mm.
between the behavior and your response. So it doesn't have to be a breath,
Yeah.
but it does need to be a reflection.
Right.
Like, teachers need to be reflecting on what behaviors are bothering them. They need to create a plan for when those behaviors come up, and they
Right.
need to have some sort of self-care and identifying, like, when they're not at their best as
Right.
well.
Yeah. I feel like I've
So
been.
I gave you like 3 answers to
That's
you. You're like,
solid.
what's one thing that the teachers can do? And I'm like, they can do all 3 of these things.
Then that is a heck of a return on investment right there for sure. What's like one thing you are really optimistic about? What's giving you hope right now? Um, in the landscape of everything in 2025 when we're recording this, like what's giving you hope about how teams will support each other through some of these like really difficult moments?
Like teachers are still in it. Like, they're still teachers are still showing up.
Yeah.
Like, that's hopeful, right? Like,
Yeah.
like people are still in and doing the work. People are excited to learn. I was on
Mm.
a grant. I led a grant funded training last night, with over 100 participants who gave up their time to come and listen to me and Jana talk about the pyramid model.
Yeah.
And they left with a lot of strategies. And I
Yeah.
think that that is what gives me hope, right? Like teachers are still showing up. They
Right.
want to learn more. They want to do better, right? Like
Yeah.
do what you know until you know better and do better.
Yeah.
So like teachers want to learn, and they are able to identify when things aren't going as
Right.
well as they would like, and they're seeking out opportunities to improve their practice. So I think that element of the teacher growth mindset
Yeah.
is definitely one of the things that is giving me hope
Yeah.
looking into the future. Um, I also like I'm really excited about the work being done here in Colorado around the pyramid model.
Yeah.
And like personally for us, we're looking to build and bring in the pyramid model to our EI work, because there's a ton of resources that are, not as widely talked about in the
Yeah.
early intervention world, related to practitioner coaching and family planning for some of that goal setting with
Right.
those EI goals. And so like personally, I'm excited to explore all the ways that the pyramid model can support in the EI world too. So like I'm
Woo.
excited teachers keep showing up, and I'm excited to continue the deeper dive into all of the aspects of the pyramid model. Gave you two answers to that question too. I can't just answer with one, so sorry.
It's a great thing about you, Michelle. I really appreciate your hard work, and I appreciate the experiences that you've gone through that have led you to this place where now you get to share with other people, and I selfishly get to learn from you. And I can't wait to bump into you again. I don't know when our next um, conference or circumstance will be. Do we have anything coming up? I don't think we do.
I did not. I decided to not do NACI this year. I submitted for
You've done
the
so much that like I don't even
I've
blame you.
I'm in a spot where I'm like, I just, like traveling is expensive, and it's one of those where I'm like, I can commit to only so many, and so I'm not sure when my next like a conference appearance will be, but I'm sure we'll run into each
I'm
other, and
sure we will.
you're
I'll be
coming
in
this
Denver
direction
later this
soon.
year,
Yes.
so we'll get to hang out. Thank you for sharing all of your expertise and your positivity. I think this is like coming at a really important time to be a little optimistic. So thanks for your time. Thank you for your energy, and I will see you very soon.
Thanks so much for having me.
Woo.